Welcome to Glitch Cube, we're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. I'm Christian.
I'm Chris.
And thank you once again for joining us this week as we dive deeper into the dark ages of gaming, where we talk about some of the well-known quote-unquote failures in the gaming industry. And this one, to me, this is really interesting. It does pop up a lot on the failure lists as far as gaming consoles go. And yes, it did fail. It has a very short lifespan, but I almost want to say that this is a successful experiment as far as gaming goes. So what I'm talking about is the 3DO. And this system is very interesting. They were able to allow the player to bring home the arcade, basically. This system came out in 1994, and it was revolutionary in the way that it processed audio, the way it licensed out things, like from the business side to the tech side to the games that were coming out. It had a lot going for it and a lot of buzz behind it, and that was partially due to the founder and creator of 3DO Industries, which was it Tim Holland or Howard?
Trip Hawkins.
What's that?
Trip Hawkins.
Oh my god! Trip Hopkins.
I thought you said Tom Holland for a minute. I'm like, wait a minute, he was alive.
I did say Tom Holland. I totally have Spider-Man on the brain still. Yeah, Trip. So, wow, I'm leaving all that in because that's just stupid. Talk about failures. Anyway, this guy is super revolutionary in just gaming culture in general and just tech, right? He super brilliant. He ended up getting his degree at Harvard, and during that time, he was super fascinated with video games and the idea of what they can do in the future, right? He wanted to expand on this genre. So while he was attending Harvard, he ended up just taking random classes that pertained loosely to gaming, but none of them were ever linked to a degree specific for game design, because that just wasn't a thing back then. And he kind of created his own game design degree path, which is really fascinating. And I really commend the people who do that. And it's actually an option in a lot of universities where you're able to kind of blend multiple degree paths together to create your own custom one, which a lot of people don't know about, but it is a lot harder to accomplish these things. So really kudos to this guy. And then once he graduates from college, he ends up working at Apple. And after only working there for 4 years, he becomes the head of, marketing and design, right? Yeah. Which is amazing to think about. Like, within 4 years, he becomes one of the head honchos for Apple. It's nuts. And this is when Apple was first starting, so everything is just new, revolutionary, pioneering, just kind of paving the way for what we have now currently. So it's really cool to see. But his love for video games never died out, and eventually he wanted to get back into that. So he decided to leave Apple, and he created his own company, which you might have heard of. It's still around, even though he's not part of it anymore. It is Electronic Arts. Now, I know nowadays Electronic Arts does have a lot of buzz around it of not being the greatest company to work for or deal with, but back then it was a revolutionary company and it didn't have any of the issues that it currently has now. So try and keep that in mind, where it's not the quote-unquote evil company that we know of nowadays. So while working there, he, continues to expand on what he's doing. And then eventually he does leave EA and creates 3DO Interactive, right? Is it Interactive or University? I think it's Interactive. And from there, that's where we get the 3DO system. So before we jump into what it was, a little bit more on the specs and a little bit more on just kind of a deeper dive on the 3DO system itself. What's your experience with it? What have you heard about the 3DO system?
Well, something I found interesting that I didn't realize till just now is that it actually released September 12th. So basically 29 years ago.
Oh gosh, that's crazy.
Probably when this episode comes out, it'll be very close. And
that's actually, that was completely by chance.
Yeah, I did not notice that until now. But my experience with the 3DO, I more so just know their games. Because I collect for the PlayStation. I see a lot of their third-party like logo on a lot of games. I never owned a 3DO. I remember seeing them like used, probably like the early 2000s
for like $800. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, still $800. But I never picked it up because I was like, why would I want this when I can have the superior console, the PlayStation? And we'll get more into that about how that kind of was the main enemy of the 3DO. But the games on it were interesting. Back in the day, I was not into FMV or any of the games really on it. But nowadays, it's more of like an interesting relic. You look back at it and it's like, wow, like this was at the time that it came out in 91, it seemed almost ahead of its time, with 3D and stuff like that. You didn't really see that kind of quality in gaming till at least a few years later. And I mean, it's crazy to think about what they were doing. I thought the business practices were really interesting about what they were doing with like royalties and licensing that, you don't see that anymore.
Yeah. I think that's the most fascinating part about the life of this system. So so I think we can go into a little bit of the business practice behind the 3DO right now. So the 3DO has a very interesting philosophy when it comes to designing games, and not just games, even the system itself. So during that time, 3DO Interactive didn't have the resources to actually make the console themselves. So they decided to license out the hardware to various different companies, and they actually ended up contacting pretty much every single electronics company out there to, see if they want to make this system. Another thing that they did as well, branching off on licensing, was they continued with that trend and and played with the royalties and licensing of the games themselves, right? So during this time, and it's still a current thing that isn't really talked about a lot, right? Whenever you buy a game, you're not just paying the developers of the game. You have multiple different parties that you're paying at that time, right? And hence the price for it. So you're paying obviously the developers, and then you're paying the shop that you bought it from, whether it's, online or a brick and mortar store, right? And during this time, it was, brick and mortar stores. They didn't have like Amazon Prime Delivery in 94. So, and then the final person that you were paying was the actual console itself that the game was then housed on. So that kind of like all combines together to the ultimate price. Now, at that time, let's say you wanted to make a game for Nintendo, you actually had to pay about $13 per game sold to Nintendo for having it on their system, which is pretty pricey, right? When you think about it, if you're selling a game for $50 and you have to automatically give Nintendo $13, it makes sense why they're such a big, huge company to this day. Think about how many units have sold over the years. It's a lot of money.
That's why games were so expensive back then. You look at the Super Nintendo and games were like easily hitting $80.
Yeah. And it's because they had all these different fees that they had to pay. And a lot of these companies, they were made by hobbyists, right? This was kind of like the pioneering age. So they needed to find a way to make their money back, like a nice return on investment. So of course the prices would go up. But for 3DO, they took that and they flipped it, and they basically sided with the designers, and it was a way to bring in more designers, more gaming companies to want to have their games on the 3DO system. So instead of paying 3DO $13 for every unit sold, they only had to pay them $3. And that's a huge jump right there. So right away in my mind, I'm like, what a brilliant plan. If they can keep that up and still run a profit, then why isn't everyone jumping at the chance to have their game on a system, right? Like, this is kind of the ultimate, or like the old school Steam in a way, right? Where for a low cost of entry, you can have a game released on a console and have it in people's living rooms and have people enjoying it around the world. It's kind of amazing. Now, on the flip side of that, though, when we look at the hardware itself, right? So they did license out the hardware to different companies, but in order for those companies to then turn a profit, that actually jacked the price up quite substantially. So remember, this is 1994, and in order to get your hands on a 3DO when it first came out, it was going to run you about $700. Now, that is insane to think about, because right now that's the price of like the PS5, right? It's around that time.
Not even. PS5 is like $600.
So it's more expensive than a PS5 now. That's nuts. That's insane. Yep. And another issue that I felt kind of came up with this licensing issue of is that since they did reach out to so many different companies, there was a lot of different brands on the 3DO. There's multiple different versions of this same gaming system. And as a consumer, I would probably look at that and automatically you're going to have your brand favorites, right? And it seems like the Panasonic version was the most popular version of the 3DO at the time. But the idea of like, I wouldn't be able to, get rid of that itch in the back of my mind that, is this the best version of this system? Especially if you're going to be dropping that kind of money on it. You want to make sure that you have the best version of it if there's going to be so many different types out there. So I think that also that is what contributed to the ultimate failure of this system, is some confusion as far as it goes as to what's the difference between these different types of hardware, right? Even if there is no difference, the fact that there is different names slapped on these things, that's kind of confusing, right? So, but overall, this is a really ingenious idea to get not only games made, but to get systems made as well. Thinking that like you could just have the idea for a brand new game system, but not have to have any of the inventory or even like the means to make these things. You can get it made and, like get it out there, get your idea out there. It's crowdfunding all the way, right? Like it's pretty brilliant in its own way. So one of the companies, or two of the companies at least, that they've reached out to have their 3DO system made was they reached out to Sony, and they also reached out to Sega. And apparently between those two companies, they were really close to making a deal. And they were in talks for quite a while. This is at least what Tripp says. He claims that they were almost going to close a deal with Sony specifically after long conversations, but then Sony decides to drop out, and they stated that, we actually are going to be making our own system, which we now know is the PlayStation, and that probably is the ultimate demise for this console itself. So I don't know, it's tough. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it's tough to call this system a complete failure, because the idea behind it is so interesting. And I feel like the idea itself is not a failure. This is definitely something to kind of look into, and it just kind of speaks on that whole idea of like the American dream, right? You can if you dream something, you can accomplish it. And they really showed that to be the case here. So
I mean, you look at the time, right? The early 90s, and Nintendo, Sega, they're Japanese companies, and people, they wanted to push this like, oh, this is an American-made console. Before that, it was just the Atari, and people were all excited, like, hey, this is a console that's made here, like, we're gonna support it. That was another big thing. But like you were saying earlier with the price and with the PlayStation, you look at it and it's too expensive. Even when they cut down the price, I think they cut it down to $500.
It's still too much.
When the PlayStation released, it was $300, which was looked at as high itself. So, and another thing too, since CD gaming was becoming bigger, you look at the Sega CD, you look at the Atari Jaguar. It was that time where CDs were starting to become a big thing. The 3DO was saying, oh, not only can you play games, you can listen to audio CDs and, those kind of gimmicks. But at that time, Sega had released a newer version of the Sega CD, which did the exact same thing for a quarter of the cost. And it's Sega. You were able to get all your franchises, your Sonics, all of that. So you look back, there wasn't really anything the 3DO had that could really pull people in it, unless you look at, say, F&B games, which were the majority on the console. I mean, that's kind of what the console's known for.
And they actually used a lot of like FMV mechanics in their games to enhance them, which I found really interesting, where they were able to take some games that were just purely like on the arcade, bring them to the console, and then maybe like change out the backgrounds, the renderings of them to a more FMV style and just completely enhance it and give you a whole new experience, which was really clever. And I do like the fact that you mentioned, how with Sega, you don't have your Sonics and things like that. That was one core thing that was missing from the 3DO was that mascot, right? Like when it came to advertisements and stuff like that, Nintendo has Mario, Sega had Sonic, right? Like they don't have that with this system. And that kind of plays into the fact that they were trying to invite all creatives to come to them to make their games. So that's kind of like the double-edged sword of having open arms to all creatives. It's going to be a lot more difficult to create like a brand behind it, right? This is kind of like the catch-all system. And the idea of it being able to play music and like that being one of the primary gimmicks, they were trying to make an all-in-one like, home unit, which is super amazing for that time. And a lot of us probably don't, like, we just second guess it now or don't even think about it, because for most of us, your game system is not only your game system, it's your Blu-ray player. For some people, it's even how they get onto the internet. It's everything. But that concept wasn't around during this time. So all of this is just super revolutionary as far as it goes with gaming.
The one thing that really stood out about the console's power was with FMV games, in that consoles before it couldn't really, like, the big ones couldn't handle it. You look at Sega CD, and the games on it wouldn't really run that well. It wasn't until they released the 32X that these FMV games could kind of run better. But that was another extra cost. When you think about it, you have to buy the Genesis, you have to buy the Sega CD add-on, and then you have to buy the 32X. And in the end, that ends up being a lot of money. That's almost close to, I think back then that would have been $500, $600.
Which is right around the same price as, the 3DO. So their price point isn't that outlandish. It's just combining everything into one lump sum, which is harder to, deal with at one point in time.
Yeah. And with the Sega, it had limitations. It could only do 64-bit, but it was really compressed. There were other consoles out there that were kind of pushing that mark, even though another failed console, the CDI, it was able to kind of handle it better, though it didn't look any better. There was the Jaguar, which, I mean, another failed console. All these like failed consoles happened around this same time because they were trying to do something new. And then the TurboGrafx CD, which, I mean, wasn't really a thing here. It was more so outside of the US, but it was doing it really well.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at it like in the US, the 3DO really was the best option for these kind of games until the PlayStation came out. And that's when it kind of changed. You know, I mean, I've played FMV games on the PlayStation and they run good, you know, as good as they can be. But when you look at, say, how FMV games started in the arcades, it really wasn't as smooth as that.
Right.
Something I did find interesting about the 3DO company itself was they released an MMO in 96. And it's weird to think of an MMO because, I mean, we didn't have the internet we have now.
And it's the final year of this console. So that's really interesting.
Well, this was released on the PC.
Oh, okay.
But it was from their company.
Interesting.
And actually on the development team of this game, the game's called Meridian 59. And it's actually, people still have private servers of this game up.
Oh, wow.
So it really is one of the longest running MMOs out there. And I mean, it's very basic. You know, it's more basic than EverQuest, any of those older ones. But someone on the development team, John Hank, actually founded Niantic.
Oh, nice.
Who co-developed Google Earth and Pokemon Go. And it's interesting seeing like, whoa, he came from that. But this game was kind of revolutionary because, I mean, there was no other MMO. I mean, you look at early Ultima and that was really it. Mm-hmm. But they did have to pay a subscription fee, which, think about paying a monthly fee on top of your AOL, which charged you by the minute.
Mm.
It would end up adding up really quick.
It's a lot of free discs that you have to steal from your neighbors.
Exactly. I mean, they gave them out like candy, so, I mean,
it's true.
You could do that, but it was ambitious, you know. And I think, honestly, when it comes to 3DO's like software part of it with games, that was probably their most ambitious title. Because you look at some of their other stuff, like the Army Man games. Personally, I loved renting those games back in the day from Blockbuster. I thought they were fun as a kid. Nowadays, I'm like, oh, well, they're kind of basic, you know, but they were cool. And I think that 3DO really could have moved on slowly towards maybe better software, but I think they were just getting defeated left and right over so many different things that, you know, there's really no way to save a sinking ship when you've already sunk more than halfway.
Yeah. And I feel like it has to also do with the fact that they had so many titles on the system. And a lot of these FMVs, I mean, FMVs are very interesting in their own sense. They get really like kind of cringy, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like there has to be some sort of like controversy with some of the games that they would allow on the system, right? Because they get really like either dark or kind of like, you know, a little rapey sometimes, and like it. But those games were getting released regardless of the fact, and it's a little, to me, that's a little weird, right? Like, but at the same time, like, you can't fault a company for publishing games. It's not ultimately their fault. But then you also have game systems like Nintendo who have, you know, practices put into place to prevent those kind of stuff from happening so that they can avoid the controversies and stay relevant longer. But I don't know. That kind of goes more into like longevity of systems and like, you know, overall culture of a game development company itself. So
definitely, because I mean, with those, you know, full motion videos, you start getting more of those adult-centered games. You know, you look at Night Trap. I mean, that was on it, and that actually, I think, was the best console it really ran on. But I mean, if anyone's kind of been on the internet and followed those gaming videos, they probably have heard of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
Yeah.
You know, if you haven't, just look up. I don't really say watch Angry Video Game Nerd all the time, but that video captures it perfectly. I mean, this game is so out there, and to think that, you know, they're re-releasing this game as a physical copy, as like, you know, an ode to a
Really?
time past. Yeah, Limited Run's doing a physical. They got the rights to it, so they're re-releasing it. And when they said they were doing that, they got a lot of heat because obviously of how controversial this game is.
Yeah, that just feels really problematic, especially during this time period.
Oh, that game. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what it is, it's basically there's two sides. There's the guy who is a plumber, and he gets yelled at his mom saying that, hey, you should have kids. And there's a girl who gets yelled at by her dad, who ends up being the narrator for this story, which is kind of weird, that she needs to have kids. And they meet in a parking lot, and, they're like, oh, we'll go on a date later. And basically the story of this is she goes for an interview for a job, and it just ends up, sexual advancements, all this kind of stuff. And there's really weird photo, like it's just a weird game, but basically it's just this huge long cuts, like still images. It's not even a full motion video, but this game, when you look at it, it's like, how was this made?
Right.
But considering what other games came out, especially for the CDI, this wasn't something totally unusual. There were other kind of games like this, if not more adult oriented, and it's interesting. You look back then, and that was so easily put out there. And nowadays, something like that really wouldn't fly. I mean, nowadays, the closest thing we have to something weird with full motion video is Super Seducer, which, I mean, those games are problematic too. People can either look at that as a joke, but at the same time, like, someone could take that seriously and actually try it. And I mean,
it's pickup artist
that's
the game,
problem.
and it's just not. It's not good. Like
Yeah.
instilling those kind of ideas, or like I would say like normalizing those kind of ideas. That's that's the major problem with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just awkward. I can't. I think that's my biggest like turnoff for FMV games, and maybe it's on that same argument as to why games or people felt like video games needed to be regulated, is that like they were becoming too real. And then when now you're actually playing real actors and performing some heinous acts, like that makes me uncomfortable. But like if it was like polygons or whatever, like a little chibi character, I probably would feel less uncomfortable playing it. I don't know. It's more of like a mental block for me, I guess.
It would feel more like a cartoon than actually like putting yourself in that situation. You look at some of these games and it's like you don't see yourself, but you see real looking people, so it's easy to put yourself in it.
Yeah. Like there's that one game that I was looked at. It was called Kids on the Site. Have you heard of that one?
Oh no. Yeah.
Like it's funny. It's pretty comedic, but you're on a construction site and you're a child worker, right? Like they're putting you in charge of heavy equipment, and they really like play up the idea like you are a child and you are running this equipment. And yes, you could do things properly and like help them out on the construction site, but you could also kill absolutely everybody in the site as well too, and like pretty horrifically. And some of the falls and some of the things that happen to these characters, if you do wrong actions, it looks painful for these actors, and I almost feel really bad for them. Like you can tell that they are recent graduates who just needed a gig real quick, and they're being like thrown around, and like it feels strange. Because
getting run over by a steamroller.
Yeah, like I mean that's super. It's totally like Who Framed Roger Rabbit style, where he like flattens out like a pancake. But but like it's almost like normalizing or like making it feel like, I don't know. It's bringing comedy to the idea of like, oh, kids can drive a heavy machinery and it's fine, right? Like I don't know. That one's tough for me. But I think that's just the whole genre itself. That's why it's so difficult for me to get behind it.
You find yourself staring down the mouth of a dark cave, hearing the low rumble of something large inside. This is it. Everything you have been fighting for lies just within this cave. Hey, man, what's the matter? This is your big ending fight scene.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've just been so tired today. Feels like I've been hit with like 2 points of exhaustion. Ugh.
You know what? I have just this thing to get you back into the adventuring spirit.
Really?
Of course. I have a delicious roast from Geek Grind Coffee.
Huh. That sounds pretty cool. What kind of brews do they have?
They have blends like Dragon's Roast, Dwarven Dawn, Wizard's Mist, and so much more. They have even one celebrating Jim Henson's The Labyrinth, the Goblin King's Elixir.
Whoa, those sound awesome. I'm waking up just hearing about them. Is there an easy way for me to pick up some?
I got you. For the fans of our show, if you visit geekgrindcoffee.com right now and enter the promo code GLITCH at the checkout, you will get 20% off your order.
Whoa, that's great. So you're saying if I go to geekgrindcoffee.com right now and enter the promo code GLITCH at checkout, I'll get 20% off my order? That's amazing.
That's right-yo.
All right, I'm ready for this adventure. Bring it on. Hey, that's a natural 20. Just like the discount you can get when entering the promo code GLITCH at geekgrindcoffee.com.
Level up your morning with Geek Grind Coffee.
Yeah, there's definitely more lighthearted bad games, and then there's more so like controversial, but to really look at like FMVs, going back in time real quick, they started in the early 80s in arcades. It was called Astron Belt, which didn't really look so much like an FMV game. It just, the models looked like the ship looked realistic, flying through space. And then some people classify Dragon's Lair as kind of the first big one. Even though it's still a cartoon, it's still full motion. And
I didn't even think about that. Like, that's actually a game I really enjoyed, but it is an FMV. When I didn't even, like, my brain never put that together as an FMV for some reason.
Yeah, and there was actually a lot of these, like, I forget, it's like it's not Hollow Deck, it's something, but there was this game where it was on you were basically looking at this like flat surface, and then like these holographic like images of people would play out different scenes, and it was the same thing as Dragon's Lair, where you had to do different directions to change the actions. And it was really fascinating to see that they were able to do this in the arcades at such an early time. That's kind of the start of the use of full motion, but we didn't really see it take form until the Sega CD 3DO to what we know now. More, I don't want to say high end, because back then it didn't look high end.
Right.
But you had your funny games, like you look at, like how you said, Kids on the Site, like it's a comedy even though it's messed up. But then you have like Thunder in Paradise, which was
the Hulk Hogan one.
The Hulk Hogan one. Yeah, it was based off of a show that lasted a season, and it was just terrible. It was one of those shooters, but like it was weird. You would shoot them, and then they like flash colors and then just go away.
Yeah.
Like that was another big thing with FMV were shooters. And you look at, I forget what it is. It's that police one, but it looks realistic. And then you have, I don't know if you've seen this one, but Criss Cross had one.
No, I didn't, but that sounds awesome.
It was Make My Video Criss Cross. And you're this like radio DJ, and you get a call, and people are like, hey, you should make a music video for Criss Cross. So basically you're collecting a bunch of different images or little like video clips, and you're putting it all together. And then at the end, you're rated on how well you followed that list. But at the same time, you're getting like not only Criss Cross rapping in your ear, but if it's bad, he'll be like, that's whack. Like he'll just like make fun of you. I didn't know this game existed till like maybe a week ago, but it captures 90s so well. Yeah. It's terrible.
That's actually really cool though. I like that concept for a game. It's like Band Manager the game, right? That's pretty cool. And I wonder how many, like, because that's one thing too, like with a lot of these FMV games, they feel like really cheesy, like training montage videos for like work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm wondering, like, if you could actually teach people skills through FMV game styles, right? Like
I think
kind of
you
like
could,
teach them what
like
it's
VR.
like, teach them what it's like to be like a day in the life of a X, right? Like whatever programmer, or like an astronaut or whatever it may be, and kind of live that lifestyle through FMV for a little bit. It would be interesting.
That would be kind of fun. But yeah, then you have other ones like Slam City, which was a basketball FMV game, which you just got dissed all the time. It wasn't really fun, but it was interesting because it was different. You know, I mean, a sports game FMV, you didn't really see that back then.
Right.
But I want to kind of go into maybe now the more controversial games, because there's definitely a lot out there, and we already talked about some of them. But there was one, I've played this. I played it a while ago. I don't know if you ever heard of Harvester.
Oh yeah, very campy horror.
Yeah, very gory. It was banned Germany and a few other places, I think, as well. And basically, it's a point-and-click adventure. You're this teenager, or 18, I don't know, something like that. And you wake up in the Midwest. You don't know what's going on. People are just weird. They're asking you to do mundane tasks, when it ends up getting a little more violent. And apparently you find out there's this cult in the city. And it's very campy. Yeah. It is messed up. The voice acting is terrible. Oh, yeah. Just everything about it, it's like so bad. But I kind of looked past it when I played it. I actually kind of had fun with it. But definitely, you know, possibly it might be too much for some people.
I feel like Harvester has potentially some of the most iconic lines in games. At one point, it shows a human skull attached to a spine, right? Like someone just died, and you're the boy with the detective, and they're kind of like looking at it, and the detective looks down and he goes, "Well, I think it's pretty clear that they died of natural causes," and like the person just had their spine ripped out, right? And the boy looks at him and goes, "Natural causes? What are you talking about?" And the detective's response, I think, is just freaking brilliant. But he's like, "Well, it's not natural to have your spine taken out of you. So yeah, natural causes." It's just like, it's like, wait, what? Or yeah, super weird stuff. And I think at one point, like the boy's talking to his mom, and she says like, "Oh, you shouldn't be playing those games," and he literally just says, "Shut up, mom." Like, like you said, voice acting is not good, and the script writing in general is just horrible. So, yeah, interesting stuff though.
The last one, and I played this too, maybe like quite a bit of it, just because of how well known it is, but Phantasmagoria, I always mess that up. But I played it because it's a Sierra game, and I know Sierra is always great with their point and clicks. But it's about this couple. She's a famous novelist, and they move into this haunted house to get inspiration, and basically things just go wrong. This game was actually banned, or not banned, but CompUSA, which was, you know, back in the day, this version of, you know, Best Buy. Like that's where you went for computer games and stuff like that. They didn't want to sell it because the violence was too realistic. And the problem with that is, just like how we were talking about in our rating episode, when you say that kind of stuff, people want to play it.
Yeah.
So it started getting this huge following, and it was actually banned in 2 countries for it. And there was a huge argument. There was many people pushing like, this game shouldn't exist. Like, this is actually like violent. It's teaching wrong issues. I mean, there's even like a sexual assault scene in there. Like, it's pretty far out there, you know, and like, it is campy. It has that campy horror vibe, but at the same time, it's like, you know, sometimes it might go a little too far.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, to me, it was the theme was the same as, like, say, Seventh Guest, which, if anybody wants a good FMV game from the old days, Seventh Guest is probably my pick for a good way to experience it without the controversial stuff. It's just a good point and click adventure, and it's a classic.
I'm wondering if that game was not released as a game, but rather just a movie, if it would have the same like drama attached to it, banned in countries.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, right? It's the fact that it's a game and you're playing through it. So it's the idea that you're making the choices to make this happen, even if it's like a railroad kind of game, right? Like, yeah. So, I mean, just another thing to think about whenever people start bringing up like how games incite violence. It's not. I mean, if you have a movie of the same thing, like, I mean, look at, what is it, like Girl with a Dragon Tattoo? Like, that's a horrible, horrible story of, like, abuse towards a woman, right? But the revenge story nonetheless. And everything about it is just, like, kind of messed up and violent and, sexual abuse, all of it. But it's, like, critically acclaimed, right? And, like, the novel's on the bestsellers list. And, like, there's all kinds of stuff like that. But if it was made into, like, an FMV game, that would be instantly like banned. People would be shouting at their government, writing to their congressmen saying like this needs to get taken off the shelves. Like, so it's interesting. Like the delivery method is what makes it a problem. So,
yeah. But modern FMV games nowadays, they feel more like a movie. They don't feel as campy. I feel like they've come a long way. They're not big, but one that did kind of get well known, it's made by the same people, Her Story, and then Telling Lies is another game by them. And I think they're really interesting. I've watched people play them because I'm not big in FMV, but they're pretty good. Basically, it's just, with Her Story, you're trying to catch someone lying, and kind of the same with Telling Lies. It's just thrillers. I mean, that's most of the FMV nowadays. I don't really see shooters anymore. It's just all like thrillers or comedies. And it's interesting how people are trying to, I don't want to say revitalize that genre, but the people that are making them, they're good. They're not terrible. Like I think this style of game can be done really well. It's just, it's hard, because we're so used to looking at these games being bad. I think about what could be good. And I mean, this is an interactive story, not an FMV, but you look at Bandersnatch, where you were able to do choices. Yeah. Stuff like that. Like, I think interactive movies is a more interesting choice than really an FMV game.
I think it's the natural evolution of the FMV game.
Yeah. If there were more movies, quote unquote, like that, like, I'd be happy. I really like that kind of idea, and I think it'd be a lot of fun. I know it'd be a lot of work having to film different scenes and endings and stuff, but it's cool being able to make choices, and it's not like a game where you just kind of feel like stringing along the story. Because with a movie, it does feel different. Like, you actually feel like, whoa, this is crazy because it's out of my control for the most part. And I don't know, I would be happy seeing more movies or games kind of go that route.
Yeah. I remember when Bandersnatch came out, I was obsessed with that. I think me and my fiance spent like at least 2 or 3 days going through it, trying to get every ending and every potential, like making every choice possible. Just because it was so interesting to see. And it became like you were altering reality in a sense, and it was just really, really fun to play through that and to watch it. And yeah, I if FMVs kind of went more towards that kind of direction, where it was more of like choose your own adventure movies, then I would be like really down for it. I think it'd be really fun to see what they can do with that.
I agree.
Yeah. So there's some interesting things that can come out from it, but like we said, there's a lot of problematic stuff that also comes from FMVs, and it's just, It's the history, right? Like every single form of media has its problematic. It's like problem children, right? Like you have like books that have been banned, movies that have been banned, like things that just really push the envelope. And I feel like FMVs are that for gaming. They really pushed the idea of what a game is, and I have to commend them for that. As just like I would commend, like Marcel Duchamp for pushing the envelope on what is art. It's that same mentality, and I think that's what really allows us to grow and continue to change as people and allows the medium to evolve over time. So it is quite fascinating to see these things, even if they aren't your cup of tea. Like, I don't really enjoy them that much personally, but I do respect the fact that they're there because it's allowing people to tell a story differently. And we all have a story to tell. And it just shows that there's a different media source or a different way for us to get it out there to share with the people or to share with the masses. So it's interesting. It's definitely kind of fun.
That was really well put.
Thanks a lot. I'm smart sometimes. And now I just ruined everything I just said. And everyone's going to forget all of that stuff, but that's fine. But yeah, so I think that's going to do it for us this week. We talked a lot about a system that, it had a lot of interesting ideas, and it was very innovative in the way it was approaching not just games, but the business of games and how they can be developed and put out there. And it's very, very cool. I really like that idea, and it was fun looking into this as something different. And it harkens back to one of the things. This is my last tangent, I swear. It's part of the conclusion, so we're fine. But it harkens back to what one of my professors told me when we were designing games, was that he wanted us to actually find games that quote unquote failed instead of ones that succeeded when we were, trying to figure out what we we're going to do for our final project, because a lot of these failed games have something interesting about them. Whether they pushed the envelope too soon, they went too far with something, there's always an interesting concept behind them that gives them some gravitas, like something important and essential to learn from. And whether it's, even if they didn't push the envelope or come up with something innovative, it's always good to look back at these to see what went wrong and what can we do in the future to help change that. And that's not just with gaming, that's with life in general. So it's always good to look back at failures, but not dwell on them, to the point of depression and spiraling down, this whole rabbit hole of that, but to look at them as ways to potentially grow. And with this, like, that's kind of why we wanted to look at some of these quote unquote failures in gaming and systems and actual games themselves, is to see where we went wrong and where we grew from them and what came out of these ideas, because they all are good ideas, and there's a lot of people who back these projects, so there's a lot of people who are rooting for them, so there has to be something to them. So there's a lot to learn, and it's just a lot of fun looking at these. I'm really enjoying this series. I think it's just ultimately what I want to say right now.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to our next episode or two, because we got some more interesting stuff lined up.
There's some really crazy stuff where they really push the envelope, and it's great to see. But yeah, so real quick, if you guys are enjoying this, please make sure to leave a 5-star rating review on the podcast listener of your choice. Currently, Apple Podcast is probably the best way to do it, honestly. And one thing that I would like to do, if you do leave a rating review, we want to shout you out. So leave reviews on there, and we'll shout you out by name on the show next time. So let us know. And then if you want to get in contact with us, we are most active on Instagram, and that is the Glitch Cube Podcast. Yeah. I don't know why my brain just broke and I forgot our own handle. But yeah, just follow us on Instagram so you can figure out what we're doing and keep up to date. We also update one of our other shows as well, the Murder of Grey podcast, on there too. So if you want more information on that, you can find us through our Glitch Cube Instagram and kind of venture out that way if you want to hear more from us. But yeah, so that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for joining. If there are any failed games out there that you enjoyed or ones that you want us to tackle in the future, please let us know. And if you have any stories of FMVs that you've played or just stories of you playing the 3DO or some sort of, experience that you've had with that system, let us know as well. It would be great to hear from you guys. So yeah, thank you guys again for joining us, and bye.
Bye.